Praises to the Most High, job blessings to you all. I am Dr. W. Gabriel Selassie, the revolutionary historian. I'm responding to a number of inquiries by young Rastafari who've asked me to provide for them a number of texts that they could read to learn more about the way of life and the faith. I'm going to speak about one of these books, and I guess in a series of follow up videos, I will talk about the other text as well. But today we're going to begin with one particular text called the Holy Piby, the Blackman's Bible. But before I do that, I would just like to say that I think it is really important for all young Rastafari to really take on a serious program of study to learn more about the history and how and why Rastafari culture was created and why it's been able to sustain itself worldwide. Most people come to the faith, come to it with certain assumptions about ganja or about the diet or the overall beliefs. And there's a lot of false and bad information that has essentially been passed on from person to person. And a lot of this misinformation could be cleared up quite easily by engaging in a period of self study. And of course, along with come with that is an examination of the history and the faith. And you'll have a better understanding of why it is individuals like myself were turned on to Rastafari in the first place. The first text again is the Holy Piby, the Blackman's Bible. Here is a copy of the text that I wrote, and I'll pull back so you can see it. So mine, of course, has the country of or the continent of Africa, with the country of Ethiopia outlined, and I do that for a particular reason. Number one, the precepts and the ideas and the ideology that ferments out of Rastafari is Afrocentric. The second point to this is that Rastafari look towards Ethiopia as being the promised land. There is a community of Rastafari that exists there that have engaged in the idea of land nam or land claiming, and this land was given to Rastafari by His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. So we look towards Ethiopia as being our definitive homeland and our place of theological birth. But the Holy Piby was written by Robert Atherley Rogers, who was from the island of Anguilla in the Caribbean. He was born in 1891 and died in 1931 of somewhat mysterious circumstances, but nevertheless, in 1924, he did publish the Blackman's Bible. This Bible is a primary text of Rastafari culture. It is something that every Rastafari should read to get a real good sense of the sort of underbelly, the ideological thinking and the philosophy that essentially supports Rastafari culture. Rogers came to the United States around 1913, and there he met up with the Honorable Marcus Garvey, who, of course, as you should know, started the Universal Negro Improvement Association and Communities League. But not only was Marcus Garvey a primary influence on Robert Atherley Rogers, also one of the other great influences on his thinking was a man named Hubert Harrison, who was also from the Caribbean. Harrison was born in 1883 and died in 1927. But during his short period of life, he was able to write quite a bit about Black culture and Black history. And he could be honestly said to be one of the forerunners of what we would know today as Black Power. One of the fundamental ideas that Harrison pushed was a train of thought or a philosophy that had been in the United States circulating within the Black communities as far back as the 17th century, and that is the idea of Ethiopianism. And what Ethiopian is the central belief that Ethiopia is the wellspring by which Black culture and Black life gets its theological cultural, sociological, and historical support. In other words, we look towards Africa as being our homeland, and we take pride in the fact that Africa, expressed through the idea of Ethiopianism, is our natural place of birth. So, for a Rastafari, not only do we inculcate the idea of Ethiopianism, but we also look toward the present day place of Ethiopia as our birthplace. Now, let me just say this. Rastafari are spread throughout the diaspora. We have Rastafari in Africa, Rastafari in the United States and Canada, the Americas. We have Rastafari in Brazil. We have Rastafari spread throughout the world, and we're all connected through the idea of Ethiopianism. We all have a shared history of slavery. Either our families were taken in slavery or we ourselves were taken in slavery, but we do share that common history. And because we share that common history, we have a common bloodline that extends back to Africa. And so, what the Blackman's Bible does is that it incorporates the idea of Ethiopianism, some Christian principles. Of course, Rastafari is built on some Christian principles. We do believe that there is an ultimate supreme creator that we, because we have no other language to express that, we call God, and that God is manifested through his imperial majesty, Haile Selassie, the Lion of Judah, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. And so what we see from this is the idea that all Black people are connected through not only a shared history, but a shared bloodline lineage. And so, what Robert Athalie Rogers is doing in the Blackman's Bible is offering an alternative to the Judeo Christian, Eurocentric Christian theology or religion. And what he's done here is presented to Black people the ways in which we can unite as a people to build strong Black families and to resurrect, so to speak, or to create a renaissance of Black thought, Black life, Black culture, so that Black people can essentially unite throughout America, but also throughout the diaspora as one people. So, in many ways, the Blackman's Bible is a document that prescribes the way in which Black people should conduct themselves to build strong families and to build prosperous ways of life. And why this is important is, if you have to remember, since this book was published in 1924, people during the time period could readily see that American capitalism and industrialism was on the rise, and that certain groups in America were essentially becoming very prosperous. And so part of the idea, the philosophy behind Marcus Garvey was the self-help philosophy that Black people ought to engage in the capitalist enterprise and build the Black businesses in Black industries to uplift Black people to their rightful place in the world affairs. And so what the Blackman's Bible does is that it prescribes these same fundamental ideas that Marcus Garvey had in a theological perspective. Now, some of you may say, well, Marcus Garvey particularly may not have been religious, and that is somewhat true. There is an actual church that was associated with the UNIA, the Negro Improvement Association, and I'll talk about that in another time period. But this is needless to say is that Marcus Garvey grudgingly understood the fact that Black people all over the hemisphere were wedded to some form of religion, whether it be the Nation of Islam, or it would be mainstream Protestant Christianity, or they practiced some form of Catholicism. Unlike places in Louisiana, Black people were essentially wedded to some form of religion. So what the Blackman's Bible does is it takes the Judeo-Christian ideas and fundamentally reworks them and provides Black people with their own particular Bible so they can develop their own sense of religious identity centered around the concepts of Ethiopianism, right? So look for my next book that I will prescribe to you. But for now, this is the Holy Piby, the Black Man's Bible. Job blessings to you all.